Oil injection on two-stroke sleds is a great addition when it works. This is a 20-year-old Skandic SUV. Been a fantastic sled. I would never get rid of it. However, I've rebuilt the engine several times, and the last time I rebuilt it, last year, was due to oil pump failure. So I've decided I'm not going to replace the oil pump. I'm not going to continue to take the chance. That was my second oil pump, so that's 2 oil pumps I've gone through. So this is the oil pump that's on these. They're on many Bombardier sleds. So it's pretty simple how it works. The throttle cable connects to where my thumb is, and at an idle position it's approximately here. And as you squeeze the throttle, it rolls that around and increases the oil flow that gets to the engine for higher RPM. So these pumps bolt on to the engine, to the crankcase. That goes right inside the crankcase, is driven by a gear in the crankcase, in the center of the crankcase at the lower end. And the hole is obviously there to put this through and bolt it, and it seals. So obviously the crankcase has to stay sealed, and I'm not about to start trying to make something to seal the crankcase, so I'm leaving the oil pump there. Now, knowing that the oil pump is going to be turning forever and ever and ever, there's some kind of impeller pump on the inside, and if that's not lubricated, you can be sure as heck that we're going to end up with parts disintegrating inside for lack of oil. So I need to keep oil to the pump to disable it, but I don't want to be pumping it in the engine anymore. The particular pump inside the machine, when it failed, I had no oil in the left-hand cylinder, tons of oil in the right cylinder, and when I test the pump now, there are 2 outlets on the pump that pump to the cylinders. One is here, the other one's there on top, and they pump into the ports on the cylinders, directly injecting oil into the engine. So when I tested this pump, it would pump in a clear 1/8 primer line. In a given period of time, the left cylinder would pump 1 inch of oil in the line, the right cylinder would pump 10 inches of oil. So the left was getting nothing, so there's something wrong with the pump that I have in the engine now. So what I'm going to do, what I did rather, to eliminate it, I have to keep oil in here, so I have to maintain oil in this pump from the reservoir, and it has to be able to work, but I don't want it going in the cylinders. So what I've done is down below there is the oil pump. It's down at the bottom. I'll put my finger on it so you can see it. The carburetors are off. So this is the oil pump right here. And that port, this blue line, as you can see, that's the top port. There's another one on the bottom. So I've connected 2 1/8 primer lines. They're a snug fit, but they're not super tight. You can pull them off by hand. There's no clips right now. I'm probably going to clip them. But you can see those lines are blue now. They're full of oil. They're actually clear lines. So those lines I've just run back up to the reservoir. I've labeled the reservoir that the injection is disconnected. And I drilled 2 holes, and I just pushed the hoses through. They're a snug fit, and they're tight. They won't fall out. So basically the oil pump is running, and it's looping oil from the tank through the pump and back up. So that way the oil pump is not going to grind up and come apart. It's always lubricated. Now, the ports on the engine themselves, so this is the right-hand port where the oil injection was feeding into the engine. So it was just pumping oil into the bottom of the engine there. And then the other one is over here, and you can see the other one. So what I did was, that is a piece of 3/32 line. It's that yellow good quality line. It's not going to harden, I hope. I'm missing clips. I want to put some clips on it, but those, I believe, are check valves on the engine. So oil can go in, but it can't push back. And I could be wrong with that, but in any case, I've just connected one to the other. I could make individual things melt the line and try and block them, but I've seen other people that just connect line A to line B. You can see the hose going there. So there's just a couple of inches of line between them, and no air can get sucked into the engine crankcase, which would in fact lean the engine out and cause a problem. So they're just connected together. So that is all I've had to do, and basically I'm mixing my gas now. The oil pump is going to be cranked forever and shouldn't grind up or come apart because it's continually oiled and just pumping back to the reservoir. Now, the other thing that I did, and you have to do something with it, because I disconnected the throttle cable, which is here. This is the section of the throttle cable that leads to the oil pump, connects with that arm right there on the front, and as you squeeze the throttle, it increases the oil rate going to the engine. So you obviously don't want this jamming on anything or getting caught, because if it was to catch on something and jam the cable, you can actually see in there, that's the, you can see the ball inside. That's the ball that used to connect to the cable. So I took a piece of fuel line, warmed it up with a torch just to warm it enough that I could slide it over this, and then heated the end and squeezed it with a pair of pliers, melted it. So I now have that end inside a nice sealed cable. So if there's snow and ice and water down the bottom and freezing and thawing, it's not going to jam my cable up. It'll continually stay free, and I don't have to worry about my throttle cable getting stuck and not being able to operate. So essentially, oil is the oil pump is deleted, disabled, and I'm back to mixing gas. So that's the way I've chose to do it, and so far it looks like it's working really well, and no problems. I tried to leave it going originally. I tried to leave the oil pump in place with the oil lever, I would say, set at idle. In other words, no oil or very little oil should be pumping to the engine. But for some reason, there's something wrong with that pump, and it was pumping a ton still to cylinder on the right and next to none to the cylinder left. So I was smoking like crazy, and the engine was struggling with the amount of oil getting into the right cylinder, burning so much blue smoke, etc. So anyway, it's working, and I think it should last without any issues. The fact the oil pump remains full of oil, and will keep going, hopefully. Anyway, hope somebody finds this useful.